So, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our software overview of Sage Intacct for Education. We really do appreciate you giving up an hour of your valuable time. So we do hope you find the session valuable. Quick intro from me. My name's Stephen Jones. So I've been involved in the education technology sort of finance space since 2016. I've been involved in a number of software launches into the multi-academy trust sector, during my time at Sage, the Access Group, and most recently IMP Software. And I don't know whether you do agree with me, but I think my thoughts over the years that there hasn't been a massive change in finance systems options available for schools and trusts until perhaps more recently. And from speaking to many MAT CFOs, finance team members, there still seems to be a great deal of frustration out there with suppliers missing key areas of functionality, providing subpar levels of support, and trust being hit with rising or hidden costs to perhaps adopt the DfE chart of accounts, or if you do need to scale and grow your trust to add a school, you could run into sort of thousands of pounds in implementation fees. And like you, who've probably sat through many finance system demonstrations in the past, I'm hoping that Sage Intacct for Education is really going to offer you something different, and why we really do see this system as the future of MAP finance. So during today's session, what we're going to cover is a quick intro to Ion, because of course it's great to have the best-in-class solution for your trust, but it's also very important to have the right team behind you, supporting you. We're going to have a look at our customizable dashboards and reports. So this is one of my favorite parts of the software. So in Sage Intacct for Education, you've got real-time, auto-consolidating, fully drillable, role and activity-related reports. And you've got no static data or analytics that you can interrogate. So with all our fully customizable dashboards, you can create environments that's going to allow you to work more effectively, no matter what your role is within the trust or the school. We're going to also touch on consolidation. So as Sage Intacct for Education adopts that one pot of data approach, the system auto consolidates. So you're not having to drop data to Excel or log in and out of different schools to run various reports. And perhaps as the CFO or the central finance team, we're always going to give you that top level view with the ability to go into individual schools and open multiple tabs in the system as well. The system is True Cloud, which we will talk about in a bit more detail during the demonstration. We're going to also look at the purchase to pay process, which my colleague Kevin will take you through. And that process can be completely customizable depending on your structure, your permissions, your delegation models. So you can move towards that completely paperless approach if you wanted to. We're also going to cover off budget and spend insights. And this is a great feature in Sage Intacct for Education that gives requisitioners or budget holders visibility of their budget, what has been spent, and what is available before submission, which cuts out a huge amount of back and forth, and it crucially ensures spend control and management. Just in terms of who Ion are, quick intro. So based in Newcastle, not far from Sage HQ itself, we are a Sage partner. So we're Sage's #1 education partner, which means we resell Sage Intacct for Education on Sage's behalf. So should you move over to Sage Intacct for Education, your contract will be with Ion. We will build your system for you. We will train you and support you throughout your journey with us. So Ion's been selected by Sage to lead on the go-to-market strategy for this proposition, mainly because of our experience in the sector. So our 30-strong team is made up of MAT finance specialists, MAT implementation experts, education consultants and accountants. And many of the team here at Ion are ex-Sage who have worked on hundreds of projects in the education space and delivered thousands of hours support to schools and trust. And we've got a proven SaaS delivery methodology, which we call the Ion Way, that ensures that your system is delivered on time with minimal disruption, and then it's fully customizable and bespoke for the needs of your school or trust. And then finally, it's just important to say that Sage Intacct for Education will work with you not only in your current context, but as you evolve. So it's highly customizable. It's not just a off-the-shelf product. And we've got some trusts using our software that are fully centralized or part centralized or even fully decentralized. So system will work no matter where or what your journey may look like. In terms of the proposition, we've enjoyed some excellent growth over the last 7 to 9 months. We've onboarded over 20 trusts across 300 plus schools. And as part of the process, if you did want to speak to any of our clients, we'll happily arrange that for you. They'd be happy to give you an honest appraisal of the system. That's me done. I'm just going to hand you over to my colleague Kevin in a moment. I'm going to share my personal information in the chat as well. But at any point, if you've got any questions, please do reach out on this call, or if you like to use the live chat in Teams, that's absolutely fine. And yeah, let's sort of try and make this system the session as interactive as possible. So happily take as many questions as you like. So I'll just hand you over to my colleague Kevin.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be taking you through the quick demonstration of Sage Intacct for Education today. So I'll start off by sharing my screen. Hope you all can see a nice picture of the Tyne Bridge there, but now a picture of or an image of Sage Intacct for Education, which I'm going to be talking you through. If you can't see the screen, or if there are any issues at all with being able to follow the demonstration, please just let us know via the chat. But I'll get started now. So, as Stephen has mentioned, the first, I suppose, area really to delve into when it comes to Sage Intacct for Education is to talk about the cloud functionality first and foremost, and how important that is to a multi-academy trust that needs to access the finance system. No matter what your user type is, you might be a finance user, or you could be a head teacher, you could be a school business manager. No matter what your level of access within the system is, you will still need to access from home, potentially from the office, while you're out and about. Now, Sage Intacct for Education will make that possible because it's what we call a true cloud solution, meaning it's browser-based, web browser-based. So I access Sage Intacct for Education directly via Google Chrome, but you could use any web browser. There's no restrictions on that. You could be on any type of device. So, for example, I'm on a Mac, but you could be on a PC. You could be on a laptop, or even on your phone or tablet. So that there are no restrictions around how you would access Sage Intacct for Education. Okay, as long as you've got that internet connection and a web browser of some sort, you will be able to log in and potentially, again, depending on your role, see the type of information that I have up on screen there at the moment. So as a head of finance, I might be interested in seeing what we have in the bank account, how much we have, budget information, how many new students we potentially admitted into the trust. Have we spent, have we had income relating to hire facilities? How much have we spent versus the prior month, and all those types of metrics. Now, they're just a sample of some of the data that you could potentially capture. Now, again, I've mentioned depending on your role, because head teachers might not need to see everything that a head of finance would need to see. A budget holder might need to see something different as well, and the same with school business managers and so on and so on. So these dashboards, this initial page that you can see, is very easy to customize and change the types of information. And we will allude throughout the session to some of the other types of dashboards that are available. So you can see here, I've got a Academy's accounts return dashboard. I've got a CFO-based dashboard, head teacher, month-end close, requisitioner dashboards. There's all sorts of different types which we will look at again throughout the session today. On those dashboards again, and we'll come back to this and we'll discuss it in more detail, there is an array of different types of reports that you can run. So anything from balance sheet reports to aging reports for suppliers and customers, consolidation-based reports, which again will give me income and expenditure broken out by the different schools, So again, I can kind of scroll across there on my report and see all of the different schools there side by side. So it's a really useful way of logging out unintentionally. Swipe too far to the left there. Apologies. We're getting back into it there now. So unintentional log out of the system there, but I'm straight back in. So all sorts of different reports possible to run via the dashboard. Now, we've mentioned consolidation there, and when we're looking at the trust in the different schools that I have. Now, my demonstration environment that we're working in today is a 5-school multi-academy trust. There's a mixture of secondary and primary schools in there. And we also have the Ion Academy trust level as well. So that's how Sage Intacct for Education is structured. So you have a top level, the trust itself, and then each of the schools you can create as individual entities within that multi-academy trust that you can then choose to enter and see specific information just for that school. So you can see I'm now looking specifically at Swaledale Academy. These numbers will start to change. Okay, the figures and the graphs and the charts are only giving me information now relating to Swaledale Academy. Whereas when I'm at the top level, I'm able to see information for each of the schools within the trust side by side, again, including that report we were just looking at a second ago. So as a top level user, usually would be somebody within the finance team. You wouldn't normally see, or maybe from a central finance team, you wouldn't normally see a user who's based in each school given access to see everything via the top level. Okay, but it's an incredibly useful way of being able to automate consolidation and also being able to filter based on individual schools, locations, or groups of schools. So you can see again as an example here from my head of finance dashboard, not only can I pick the filter by individual school or the trust itself, I could choose groups of secondaries, primaries, or different clusters as well. Again, depending on the needs of your trust and how you, because again, you might not be big enough right now to warrant doing that and to split the schools into different clusters. But again, as you grow and as you scale, that might become a need that you will you will have in the future. So again, it's all possible. So top level equals automatic consolidation of schools or groups of schools. Now, I've mentioned just a second ago that you may not be big enough at the moment. Your trust might be relatively small. Again, you might only have a handful of schools within the trust. But as we know, it's quite common for MATs to grow and add additional schools in over time. And that's another great use of the top level. Okay, the top level approach of Sage Intacct for Education again allows the automatic consolidation of all of the schools, but it also allows me very, very easily to scale and to add additional schools into our environment. Okay, so the top level really is that umbrella that sits above all of the schools and the trust itself, meaning that I only need to configure and set up this system once from the top level, and that configuration, those settings that apply in the system, apply to every single school that you have set up. Again, a good example of that is something like the cash management application. Your bank accounts will all be set up at the top level. Okay, so any credit cards or example bank accounts there, or the trust bank account itself. Now, again, whether you have a bank in every school or if you've got a bank that is centralized and used for the entire trust, you would manage and control that process. The cash management application is set up and configured at the top level. And that is the same theme for every one of our applications. Probably the biggest one out of the applications or the modules within Sage Intacct for Education is the general ledger. Okay, our general ledger, which will contain the chart of accounts. Now, as you can see, I don't want to spend too much time cycling through this list of over 1,000 codes from the DFE, but we have the DFE chart of accounts loaded into Sage Intacct for Education as default. You don't have to use it because, again, I know there are trusts out there who are maybe not too keen on adopting that straight away. However, I find the majority of trusts that we're working with do want it. So the general ledger that contains the chart of accounts, again, is set up once at the top level. You maintain and manage the codes via the top level. You don't need to have a chart of accounts set up for every one of the schools within the trust. You have one master list of data that sits at the top, and that is shared automatically across all of the schools. And again, that general theme will continue throughout all of the other applications you can see on the screen there at the moment. So again, purchasing workflows, which we will touch on and get into more detail about shortly, but you just need one purchasing workflow that has one set of approval policies against it, so that you know it's a uniformed approach across the entire trust, and you're not having to have school A with one workflow and school B with a slightly different workflow. Could get into scenarios where we set up things like that, but generally speaking, again, it's not advised. We want that uniformed approach where the trust can have a workflow that works for all, rather than going off and splitting that out. One last thing, just on the top level and the way that we can see data across the entire trust, is an example would be to look at the list of suppliers in accounts payable. Now, I only have a handful of suppliers in my demonstration environment. You'll have a lot more than I will. But a great way of viewing this is we can see YPO, as an example, has £35,004 due there to be paid. Now, that number is for the entire trust because I'm at the top level. I can drill into that and I can see a breakdown of how much is due. So the trust itself was 184, Derwentdale, Swaledale, and you can see that breakdown of each school for the suppliers. But I could also view that information within Swaledale itself. Remember, from my top level selection, I'm able to come in and view information specifically just for that school. So again, if I navigate into accounts payable, into suppliers, it's the same set of suppliers. I don't have to have had them set up differently. It's exactly the same supplier, but in Swaledale, we've only got 31,000 outstanding rather than the amount there for the entire trust. So again, if there are any questions on that, let me know. But it really opens the door to allow you, as a multi-academy trust, to very, very easily go ahead and add a new school within just a few clicks. So again, from my company application, go to my list of schools, I would select add here at the top, and away I go. I fill in a few boxes, and that will give me a brand new school within the trust that would sit within this list that I can begin to then use, raise purchase orders, and begin to enter transactions. And I know from experience with other systems, again, all sorts, even other Sage systems that I've worked with in the past, don't always make that very easy. When you want to scale and add a new school, there's sometimes a lot more work that will go into it. Okay, so again, if there are any questions on that, you can ask at the end, or if you've got that question throughout the session, please just let me know. Just to move forward then with the session, we're going to, so we've talked about consolidation and how that's automatic, but I would like just very quickly just to finish that off and show you, again, from my head of finance dashboard, just what that consolidation report would look like if we run that directly from the dashboard. Okay, so you can see we're running a date. We can filter it by cost center if you wanted to, a department. But again, here in my location filter, I'm choosing all of the entities within the trust. We'll click OK, and that gives me that side-by-side income and expenditure report based on the DFE chart of accounts. These numbers are all drillable, so I can physically dive into the numbers if I have questions. So if I wanted to, for example, see what the £150 there is for trading income from clubs, I can drill into that number. It shows me it's from an invoice. I can click into that again, and it will then start to give me the detail of that invoice as we drill through the report. So again, you can see into the journal, and now we're in, you can see it's for the swimming club, and then into the actual physical copy of that invoice that was processed. Okay, so very easy to drill through and drill into that information directly from the dashboard that we started on there. Okay, so consolidation is completely automatic. So just as a next topic, just to move on, we know that, I suppose we talked about a couple of great features of Sage Intacct for Education already. The cloud enabled access, where you can access from anywhere, any device, wherever you are. It's browser based, so we can log in very easily. It will automatically consolidate for you. You can grow very, very easily by adding new schools in a very simple way. What we find that we're asked about, I suppose, the most from all of the trusts that we have, and probably the most important area that we tend to find we get the most questions about is purchase to pay. Okay, so purchasing is a huge area for all multi-academy trusts. We need to make sure this is straightforward and easy to use, but it also has all of the controls that we need as a multi-academy trust to make sure that the right approvers are approving the correct transactions and making sure that you're not going to overspend on any budgets. There are options around it. It is a very flexible workflow that we have. You don't have to have this exact workflow that I'm displaying today. We can change it and we can amend it to suit your trust if that's required. And again, a good example of that would be not every single multi-academy trust wants to start from a purchase requisition. A couple of the trusts we're working with don't have that. They still keep a paper-based requisition process, which again, we're try and advise you to move away from. But again, it's the idea is you don't have to go completely electronic and digital straight away. You could maybe do that over time. A couple of the trusts start from purchase order. Again, and then they just enter the PO in as soon as everything's been approved. But again, for today's session, we will start off with requisition so you can see how easy and straightforward it is to be able to enter those requisitions. If you put yourself in a scenario where you might be a teacher within one of the schools in the trust that needs to buy something, I could click the plus symbol next to purchase requisition, and that will take me into the new entry screen to add a brand new purchase requisition. But it might be more likely in a real life scenario that they would be accessing Sage Intacct for Education via a dashboard. And you can see I've got a requisitioner dashboard that we've created here. Again, this is an example. It could look slightly different for your users. But as a requisitioner or that teacher, or again, whoever it is that needs to perform this task, we want to make it as simple as possible. So we've got some very useful communication tools that can be used there on the left-hand side, message boards and communication screens where I can have conversations like to ask John Smith why the invoice is 10% more than the purchase order. I can send that communication very easily. And again, that works on both sides. So as a finance user, I can have that conversation with the requisitioner. But if we just take a quick look, and again, the process of entering in the new requisition directly from the dashboard, I'm into my new screen where I can select a supplier. I can select a school trip if relevant. I can pop in a message to say that we need this ASAP. I can add attachments to this very quickly and easily. So again, depending on your requirements and whether or not you would want to make this mandatory, I can very, very easily drag and drop my attachment into the attachment field there, and that's it. It is attached to this requisition. I don't need to do anything else, and the budget holder or the approver will be able to see that attachment. Now, you might want to make it mandatory based on the value of the requisition. So if it's over a certain number, you have to add an attachment. Okay, but that will be optional. And again, we discussed that requirement with you during the implementation process. I will tick the box to say I've attached the file. That's just a little prompt that we've added just to remind a user that if they don't tick the box, it'll give them a little reminder message to prompt them to do that. But now I'll go ahead and I'll add in the details of what we're actually purchasing for this requisition. So as a user within the trust, I would most likely, especially as a requisitioner, be restricted to only see certain cost centers at this stage, or departments. Don't need to see them all like I can. I'm logged in here as myself. I've got an administrator role. I can see everything within this system. Your users would most likely, well, they definitely would be in the case of a teacher raising a requisition, be restricted to their cost center that they need to select here. So they'd only be able to see, as again as an example, PE. They'd then be presented in the item drop-down list with anything you see relevant for that PE cost center, or anything that might be relevant based on the supplier that you've picked. So again, I can see things like skipping ropes, I can see curriculum materials, but I could also see the YPO catalog. So I've got a whole array of different items there that I could select at this stage, depending on what it is that we're actually looking to purchase. I can search the item list. So if we wanted to buy a new iPad, as an example, I can search the item list, and it will show me anything that contains the word iPad, and I could choose from the different options. Or if we didn't go down the item catalog route, which not every trust wants to, again, it's entirely up to you, we can keep this more straightforward and just pick something like curriculum materials. And then I would expect the user, and we could put things in like enter description in big bold letters so that they do this, but they could enter in exactly what it is in the item description box that they're looking to purchase. Okay, so they put more information regarding the order that they've already potentially put in their basket or whatever that would be, or they've already kind of sourced and they know what it is that they need. They can put the information in the description of that. Nice and straightforward. The location, again, like the cost center, the location drop down would be restricted to the user, because again, if I only worked, for example, in Swaledale, I would only want to see Swaledale Academy in this drop down list. As a central user, I want to see all of the options here. I want to see every single location or school that we have within the trust. Again, just in this example, I'm going to choose Swaledale Academy, and I'm going to put a price in here, just something simple like £100. So that would be it in terms of filling in the requisition. I know I talked you through every box there, but again, you imagine over time that's going to become incredibly easy, where you've just picked a few different things, you've entered the information, and we're ready to now submit that through for approval. Before we hit submit, I'd just like to point out Sage Intacct is already validating impact that this requisition will have on the budget or PE within Swaledale Academy. It already knows how it will impact it, and the reason it can do that is driven by a tool in the background called Spend Management, which, if we hit Spend Insight, will display what that tool is actually validating. So we can see the cost center is PE, we know that. The location is E200, which is the Swaledale Academy location. We've then got the general ledger account here next. Now you might think, well, we didn't pick a general ledger account here. We didn't choose 81 or 200 or special education or whatever that would be. I've actually chosen just curriculum materials. However, in the background, we've mapped this as a finance team so that it will go to the right general ledger account. Okay, so you've got that control. Okay, the user or the teacher doesn't need to know that it's 81 or 200. Okay, you might want to put the number on there, but it's up to you. You could just have something a bit more straightforward so they know exactly what it is that they're actually selecting. But we've got the budget, the actual, the commitments that we've already placed, and then how much is available within our budget for the remainder of the month or the remainder of the year. Again, it depends on again how you would have that configured. So it's validating the spend already, and it would be enough at this stage if I tried to exceed my budget. Let's just say we'll jump that up to 1,000. Be enough for the system to tell me that there's an issue. This transaction exceeds the budget limit. You must reduce the amount of work with your budget administrator to address the overage. Okay, so that spend control is coming in there, and it's being able to potentially prevent me from overspending if we have that option switched on. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to submit for the £100. So it will go through. It has automatically approved in this scenario. I've just getting an email through there on my other screen to tell me that it's automatically approved. The reason it has automatically approved is because of my level of permission. But if I just quickly show you in the approval history what happened, it was the transaction department approval that was triggered. Okay, it's triggered approval level number 1. It's £100. It's not triggered another level of approval, which we could, if that was a need for your trust to have, which it probably will be, monetary value based levels where, say, if it was over £1,000, 2 people would need to approve this before it can be actually processed. But it's triggered the department manager approval rule, which just happens to be me anyway. So that's why it has automatically approved that requisition for me. In a real life scenario, that wouldn't be the case. To physically make the approval as a budget holder or as a head teacher, or again, whoever it is that needs to perform that particular task, I'm just going to again use the example here that it could be a head teacher who's approving the requisition. I'll be able to again do that from my dashboard. So I've got a head teacher dashboard here set up where I'd be able to see a smiley face or a thumbs up or a thumbs down or an arrow up, and I can kind of see that visual information that will let me know how we might be performing in terms of budget. But to physically make the approval, I would drill into my approval section, and then I can see anything that's outstanding for me to approve here. So in this example, something from the YPO catalog was submitted for the art cost center. Okay, and I could again see my spend insight, and I could begin to drill into and see the attachments from this screen as well. Okay, so as a budget holder or an approver, it's incredibly easy to make that decision on whether or not you're going to allow the spend to happen. Once everything is approved, which mine has been, so if we just come back into my requisitions here for a sec, there's our requisition from today's date, so purchase requisition number 211. I'm now in a position, maybe as a finance user, to convert that approved requisition into an order where it's pulled through all of the relevant details for me. I've got the items and the locations and the cost centers and the trips. I have all that information already entered because it was done on the initial stage. However, as a finance user, I might know something that the requisitioner doesn't know, and I might want to pop in maybe additional reference information, or I might want to allocate the purchase order to a fund, which I could do very easily as well. Okay, so just as a finance user, that's our another check there, just to make sure we've got the control in place before the purchase order is physically sent out to the supplier, which will be done with the click of a button. You can email or kind of PDF and view the purchase order before it is sent out to the supplier. Just to make sure that I'm happy with how that looks. So there's our curriculum materials, £100 there for YPO. So it's nice and straightforward, nice and easy. That will be emailed out to the supplier. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, the items that we've ordered would be delivered, we'd receive them. And again, this is another step that we will have in the workflow, depending on your needs and your workflow requirements. You don't have to necessarily do this part, but we find, again, it's more common than not to have a GRN step or a confirmed goods received step. So again, I can process the goods received directly from the order. It's pulled everything through for me. I don't need to change anything again, unless of course I want to, or I need to change something. But again, that's in this scenario, so I don't. Everything's pulled through for me. Everything's okay. We've received the curriculum materials. I can now go ahead. When the invoice arrives within the finance team, I can then process the purchase invoice directly from the goods received note, again, without needing to make any changes unless, and you'll know this better than myself, unless the reason is there to make the change. So if I put the document number on of the invoice, I might notice at this stage, well, wait a minute, my attachment, my actual invoice itself, that I could drag and drop. Again, remember, the attachment field can be very easily dragged and dropped into, so I could attach the invoice again at this stage to get it on the document. However, I might have noticed that the invoice itself is double, or it's more than what it should be based on the purchase order. So at this stage, if I change that value and go ahead and click post, the system will put the invoice into an exception state for me. Okay, so it's put it into an exception state because, okay, this transaction is triggered the variance rule that we had in place. It's more than, say, 10% of the purchase order. So it's pulled that line through as an exception. Okay, and the purchase price variance is actually 100%. It's double, okay, what it should have been. Okay, so that's been flagged, and I can't process or do anything to this invoice unless I am a user that has the permission to override the exception. Now, again, I've got that level of permission within my user. I can override this and say, yes, it's actually fine. But what I might want to do before that is go back to my original budget holder, right, and say, this could be John Smith. I could ask John why. Okay, I'm not going to type that out, but why is this double what it was supposed to be originally? So that could be the original requisitioner. This could be the budget holder that we're asking the question to say, why has this invoice come in at more than it should have done? Okay, and so we've got that audit trail. We've got that ability to ask those questions before it's processed. Okay, I'm going to override the exception so the invoice will process, and then we'll be able to see that when we need to pay our invoices. So the override has been overridden. We've overridden the exception, and that's processed the invoice through. So it's now available to be paid by the Ion Academy Trust bank account. Okay, on the date that we choose to do the payment run, the supplier will receive an automatic email notification from the finance team when we process the payment run. But most importantly, I think at this stage, very useful functionality is the ability to drill into the invoice. So I can see at this stage, okay, I can say it's £100, or I can say, sorry, that it's 240 or whatever that might be. So I can see it's £100 credit available, but I can drill into the actual invoice itself to check things like the attachment. Okay, I can physically drill into that so I can see the quote or the invoice or whatever that would be that has been attached to my particular transaction. But I could also drill into the supplier from here and check their bank details to make sure that the bank details are being entered correctly before we process the payment run. Okay, so very useful functionality on the payment run itself, where we can pick up all of the invoices that need to be paid and check them, make sure that we're good, make sure that we've done everything that we need to, and then physically go ahead, select the box and hit the Pay Now button, which would generate the next step of the workflow for the payment run, which would be to create a payment file that you would upload to your bank. Generally speaking, that would be the next part of the process there. Yes, that's us all the way through, and I'll with time against me slightly today, but we went all the way through from requisition to purchase order to GRN to invoice, and then through into the actual payment run itself, where we can clear down that invoice and make sure the supplier gets paid, all with the controls along the way, the relevant approval in the right places along that process to make sure that users are notified and they're making those decisions. Very quickly, because we do get asked about this quite a bit, we do also have a non-order invoice option. Okay, so every trust has requested that. Invoices that have come through without a purchase order, you do have the ability to process them. And again, you would have the same approval processes allocated to those non-order invoices. So the relevant budget holders would be notified about that spend. Okay, so right the way through from purchase to pay there. Again, if there are any questions, please let me know, or if there's anything that you want to save until the end. Once your payment run has been processed and you then need to reconcile the bank, as an example. So we might need to, once the payment run has all been successfully uploaded to the bank, the payments have been cleared. So reconciliation process, we might want to utilize, and I'll just quickly show you this functionality. It's very useful. We might want to utilize an automatic bank feed for that. Okay, so there's my bank reconciliation option. Again, like most things in Sage Intacct, you can access that option directly through the dashboard. So if I use my month-end dashboard for this, it will take you into the month-end close dashboard that I've created, and I could click bank reconciliation directly from the link within the dashboard. So I could then say I'm going to reconcile my current account. My bank feed is connected, so that means the Ion Academy Trust account within my demo environment is actually being linked up to a bank in real life. Although this is just a demo bank because it's a demo environment, you would link this up to your actual current accounts within the trust, so that instead of you ticking off against this statement manually, you would be able to see your bank statement effectively directly in Sage Intacct in the bank reconciliation screen. So just wait for that. There we go. So we've now got the Intacct transactions that have already been processed in the system, but we've also got a bank tab where we can begin to see the transactions that have came through from the bank directly, and we can choose to match them, or we could choose to create transactions depending on the scenario there. So depending on what this is for, we could say we're going to create a manual payment or a journal, or we're going to create a transaction based on that information that has been received from the bank. But you might think, well, I still have to click match anyway, or I have to action each one of them. That won't save me that much time. And again, this is where the rules of the bank feeds will then enter and save you a lot of time. There are two different types of rules that you would apply to your bank feed in the reconciliation screen. Two different types. We've got matching rules, which are fairly straightforward. You tell the system to look out for matching conditions on those transactions. So, for example, if the date of the Intacct transaction matches the date in the bank, the amount equals the amount and the description contains or equals the description. If we find that combination, just match the transaction. Don't ask me to do it, just match it for me. So that's a matching rule, but we also have the concept in Sage Intacct for Education of a creation rule. And on the create rule, this is, again, even, I suppose, cleverer again, where it can, instead of matching transactions that aren't there, if it can't find a match, it will then look to see, well, does the description in this example, this is for a bank fee or a bank charge, does the description of my bank transaction equal bank fee? If it does, I want you to create a transaction, in this case, a journal entry, based on the bank charges template. Now, my bank charges template will contain my accounts and anything else that I want to offset against that particular transaction, but it would automatically, I suppose the short story here is it would automatically create that transaction for you. It would just post it based on that information coming in through the bank. So again, really useful tool there to be able to speed up your reconciliation and your processing. And just before we wrap up again, I suppose we'll come on to very quickly the other, I suppose, area of multi-academy trusts that we know are is a huge area, and that's budget control, making sure that you've got most up-to-date budgets or forecasts that you can use in your finance system when it comes to reporting. There are multiple options in Sage Intacct for Education around budgeting. We have our own native budget planning tool called budget planning. So there's a budget planning option there. But we've also got a budget repository that can store budgets that have been imported from Excel or imported via other systems that like IMP or other budgeting tools or forecasting tools that we know exist that are in the education market, if you like, for that. So we can integrate with a lot of different budgeting solutions to be able to give you that real-time picture directly within Sage Intacct of all of that budget information. So you can see, just as an example, in here we've got a school budget 21-22, 23-24. We've got the different types of budgets there that we've created, and we can have different reforecasted versions of them very easily. It makes it nice and straightforward for me if I was to create a report to pick up and decide which budget I would actually like, or which forecast that I would actually like to report on. So if I just go into my list of financial reports in the report center of Sage Intacct, I could say on my budget holder statement, maybe not the right one, I clicked the wrong one, budget versus actual commitments. Let's try this one. Should have got the right point. There we go, this one. So we've got the school 21-22 budget, commitments, actuals, and then variances. So again, a great report, but let's just say, well, I don't want to use the 21-22 budget anymore. I want to change the budget that we're actually reporting on. I can do that very easily on the report itself. So we edit the report into the columns, and I could go ahead and I could say, instead of showing me the school budget 21-22, show me the school budget 23-24. We can preview, and that will give me different budget information there, which I actually don't have any of, so it's dropped the column, but again, you get the idea there. It's nice and easy to pick up and choose the different type of budget that you'd wish to report on. So again, if there are any questions on budgets or if there's any other information, please let me know. But I think that was just about everything that I had to cover off today. Again, if there's any other questions.